Most men never realize that the very thing they've been worried about, getting older, is actually making them more attractive to the women who matter. I know that sounds completely backwards. We live in a culture that tells you your value peaked somewhere in your 30s, that every year after 50 is a year of decline, that the dating world belongs to younger men with more hair, flatter stomachs, and fewer lines on their faces. But here's what I've learned after 30 years of studying relationships and talking to thousands of women. Something shifts when a man crosses 60. Not something he loses, something he gains. And the women who notice it aren't looking for projects or fixer-uppers. They're looking for exactly what you've become. Let me explain what I mean. When you were younger, you had energy, you had ambition, you had that drive to prove yourself. And those things have their place, but they also came with something else. Uncertainty, insecurity, that constant need to demonstrate your worth. You were building a life, and that meant you were often anxious about whether you were building it right. Women could feel that. Not consciously always, but they could sense it. The trying, the performing, the invisible tension of a man still figuring himself out. Now, you're past 60. And whether you realize it or not, something fundamental has changed. You've stopped auditioning for your own life. You know who you are. You know what matters and what doesn't. You've made mistakes and survived them. You've lost things and kept going. You've built something, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not what you originally planned. That settledness, that quiet self-knowledge, is magnetic in ways that youth never can be. I'm not talking about giving up or checking out. I'm talking about the calm that comes from finally knowing yourself. And to a woman who's also lived long enough to know herself, that calm is incredibly attractive. Think about it this way. When you were 30, you might have walked into a room wondering if people liked you. At 65, you walk into a room knowing exactly who you are, and you're not particularly worried about whether everyone approves. That's not arrogance. That's peace. And peace is something you can't fake. Women notice that immediately. There's a study I came across years ago that's always stayed with me. Researchers asked women of different ages what they found attractive in a partner. The answers from women under 30 focused heavily on physical traits and social status. But women over 50, when they described what drew them to someone, used completely different language. They talked about presence, steadiness, the ability to be comfortable in silence, a sense of humor that didn't need an audience, kindness that showed up in small moments. Every single one of those qualities gets stronger with age, not weaker. You've probably noticed this yourself without naming it. The young guy at the hardware store who talks too much, who needs to tell you everything he knows, compared to your friend who's been a carpenter for 40 years and can solve a problem with 3 words and a slight nod. Which one do you trust more? Which one actually knows what he's doing? Women make the same calculation, just about different things. They're looking for someone who's done the work of becoming a person, someone who doesn't need constant validation, someone who can sit with his own thoughts and be okay. That's you now, whether you see it or not. Here's where a lot of men get stuck, though. They look in the mirror and see what's changed physically. The gray hair, the softness around the middle, the lines, and they assume that's what women see too. They assume they're competing on the same metrics they were competing on at 30. But you're not in that game anymore. You're in an entirely different one. And in this game, you've got advantages you didn't have back then. Let me tell you about a man I knew named Robert. He came to see me about a year after his wife passed. He was 63. He wasn't looking to date, he said. He just wanted to understand why he felt so invisible. He'd go to social gatherings, and he felt like people looked right through him. We talked for a while. And what became clear was that Robert was still measuring himself against some invisible standard from his youth. He'd been a good-looking guy in his 20s, the kind who turned heads. Now he assumed his time had passed. But then something interesting happened. A woman at his book club started seeking him out for conversation. She was smart, attractive, around his age, and Robert couldn't figure out why. He told me with complete sincerity that she could probably do better. I asked him what they talked about. He said everything. Books, obviously. But also their kids, their careers, what it felt like to reinvent yourself after loss. He said the conversations felt easy, real, like they could talk for hours and it wouldn't feel like work. I said, Robert, that's why, that right there. He looked confused. You think she's interested despite your age? I told him. She's interested because of everything your age represents. You can have that conversation. You can sit with her at a coffee shop and not need anything from her except her company. You're not performing. You're not trying to impress her. You're just there. Do you know how rare that is? Robert and that woman have been together for 2 years now. And he told me recently that it's the most peaceful relationship he's ever had. Not boring. Peaceful. There's a difference. That's what I want you to understand. The attraction available to you now isn't about looking a certain way. It's about being a certain way. And you've spent 60+ years becoming that way, whether you meant to or not. You know how to listen now. Really listen, not just wait for your turn to talk. You've been humbled enough times that you don't need to be right about everything. You've learned that most arguments aren't worth having. You can apologize when you're wrong because your ego isn't running the show anymore. These aren't small things. These are the foundations of actual intimacy. When a woman in her 50s or 60s has coffee with you, she's not wondering if you have a six-pack. She's noticing whether you ask follow-up questions, whether you remember what she said last time, whether you seem comfortable in your own skin, whether there's kindness in how you treat the server, whether you can laugh at yourself. All of that matters more than you think, and all of it gets better with age, if you let it. Now, I want to address something I hear from men your age all the time. They say, Claire, I get what you're saying, but I'm out of practice. I don't know how to date anymore. The rules have changed. I'll just embarrass myself. First of all, the rules haven't changed as much as you think. Not for people your age. You're not swiping through apps trying to impress someone with a clever bio. You're meeting people in real life, at community events, through friends, at places you already go. And second, being out of practice isn't the liability you think it is. It actually makes you more genuine. You're not smooth. You're not running game. You're just yourself, a little nervous maybe, trying to connect with another human being. That vulnerability is endearing, not embarrassing. I know a man named James who started dating again at 68 after being widowed. He was terrified. He took a woman to dinner and afterward told her, with complete honesty, I'm sorry if I seemed awkward. I haven't done this in 45 years. You know what she said? I thought you were lovely. And I haven't done this in 30 years, so we're both figuring it out. They saw each other for several months. It didn't turn into forever, but it reminded James of something important. Most women his age aren't expecting perfection. They're hoping for authenticity, and you've got that in abundance. Here's another thing that makes you more attractive now. You've learned to be alone without falling apart. That probably sounds like a strange thing to call attractive, but it is. When you're younger, there's often a desperation to relationships, a need to fill some void, to prove you're lovable, to avoid being alone. At 60 or 70, you've usually made peace with solitude. You have your routines, your friendships, your interests. You're not looking for someone to complete you because you're already complete. You're looking for someone to share your completeness with. Women can feel that difference. They can tell when a man wants them versus needs them. And wanting without needing is incredibly attractive because it means the relationship gets to be a choice, not a dependency. You're also less likely to play games now. You don't have time for games. You don't have patience for games. If you like someone, you say so. If something bothers you, you bring it up. If you're not interested, you're honest about it. That directness, delivered with kindness, is refreshing in a world where everyone's trying to play it cool. I talked to a woman recently who'd been dating after her divorce. She was 56. She told me the difference between dating men in their 40s versus men in their 60s was night and day. The younger men, she said, were still posturing, still trying to seem mysterious or hard to get. The older men just told her how they felt. They called when they said they would. They meant what they said. She found that infinitely more attractive. Now let's talk about something that might be holding you back, the belief that you don't have anything to offer anymore, that your best years are behind you, that whoever you meet will be settling. That belief is poisoning your confidence, and it's not even true. Think about what you actually bring to a relationship now. You bring financial stability, usually. Not necessarily wealth, but you're not trying to figure out your career anymore. You bring emotional stability. You've weathered enough storms that a bad day doesn't derail you. You bring wisdom. You've learned things about life and people that only time can teach. You bring patience. You bring the ability to see what actually matters. You bring a lifetime of stories and experiences. You bring skills you've honed over decades. You bring perspective. Those things aren't nothing. Those things are exactly what a mature woman is looking for. And here's what else. You're not trying to change anyone anymore. You've learned that people are who they are. You can accept a woman as she is, with her quirks and her history and her own settled way of being. That acceptance creates space for real love, not the passionate, desperate love of youth, the deeper, steadier love of people who've lived long enough to know what they're choosing. That kind of love doesn't make for dramatic movies, but it makes for beautiful, real life. I want you to think about the men you respect most, the ones who seem content, who have that quiet dignity, who don't need to brag or prove anything. How old are they? Probably your age or older, right? You've become one of those men. You just haven't realized it yet. There's a concept in psychology called the mere exposure effect. It means we get used to things we see all the time, and we stop really seeing them. You look at yourself every single day. You see every new gray hair, every new wrinkle. You've watched yourself age in slow motion, so you can't see what someone meeting you fresh would see. They see a man with presence, with history written in his face, with a calm that comes from having survived, with eyes that have seen things, with hands that have built things, with a voice that doesn't need to shout. They see someone worth knowing. I've watched this play out hundreds of times. A man who thinks he's invisible walks into a room genuinely interested in the people there, asking real questions, listening to the answers, offering something thoughtful when he speaks. And women notice him. Not all women, not women looking for something he isn't, but the right women, the ones who've lived enough life to recognize value when they see it. You don't need to be the most interesting man in the room. You just need to be interested. Curiosity is attractive at any age, but especially now, because it shows you're still engaged with life, still learning, still growing. And growth doesn't stop at 60. That's another myth. You can still become a better listener, a better cook, a better conversationalist. You can still read books that change how you think, travel to places that expand your perspective, develop new interests, meet new people. The men who stay attractive into their later years aren't the ones who try to recapture their youth. They're the ones who keep moving forward, who stay curious, who remain open. There's a man I know named Thomas who took up painting at 72. He'd never picked up a brush before. He wasn't good at first. Didn't matter. He loved it. And when he talked about color and light and what he was learning, his whole face changed. He became magnetic in those moments, not because of the painting itself, but because of the aliveness it brought out in him. That aliveness, that continued engagement with being human, is what keeps you attractive. Now, I also want to address the physical side of things, because I know that's on your mind. Yes, physical attraction matters, but not in the way you think. A woman looking at you now isn't comparing you to some 25-year-old. She's seeing you as a whole person. And if you carry yourself with confidence, if you take care of yourself in reasonable ways, if you dress like someone who respects himself, that matters far more than whether you've still got a full head of hair. Confidence at 60 looks different than confidence at 30. It's quieter, less showy. It's in how you move through space, how you make decisions, how you treat people. It's in your comfort with silence, your lack of need to fill every moment with noise. That quiet confidence is deeply attractive to women who've outgrown the need for flash. Take care of your health, not to look younger, but to feel capable. Stay active because it makes you feel alive. Dress well because it shows you still care. But don't obsess over turning back the clock. You can't, and you shouldn't want to. The goal isn't to compete with younger men. The goal is to be the best version of who you are right now. And who you are right now is someone with depth, with stories, with hard-won wisdom, with scars that prove you've lived. All of that is attractive to the right person. Here's what I want you to take from this. You haven't become less. You've become more. More yourself, more settled, more wise, more patient, more kind, hopefully, more aware of what matters. The loneliness you might feel sometimes isn't because you're not attractive. It's because you're not putting yourself in positions where the right people can see you. You're staying home, assuming no one wants to know you. Or you're going out with the belief that you're past your prime, and that belief colors everything you do. But if you went out believing the truth, that you have real value to offer, that your age is an advantage, not a liability, that the right woman would be lucky to know you, everything would shift. You'd make eye contact. You'd start conversations. You'd be open to possibilities. You'd let people see who you actually are, instead of hiding behind the assumption that they won't be interested. And some of them would be interested. Not all. You don't need all. You just need one who sees you and thinks, yes, him. That woman exists. She's out there living her life, probably thinking similar thoughts about herself, wondering if anyone would want her, assuming her best years are behind her, not realizing that she's also more attractive now than she's ever been, in ways that matter. When you two find each other, it won't be fireworks and drama. It'll be recognition. Like you've both been waiting for someone who finally makes sense. Someone who doesn't need you to be anything other than what you are. Someone who fits. And that fitting, that ease, is worth infinitely more than the passionate chaos of younger relationships. So stop hiding. Stop assuming you're invisible. Stop believing the culture that tells you only youth has value. You're 60, 70, maybe older. And you've earned every one of those years. They've made you who you are. Someone with substance. Someone with stories. Someone who knows how to weather storms and still find reasons to smile. That person is deeply, genuinely attractive to women who've also lived long enough to know what real value looks like. Trust that. Believe that. And let yourself be seen. Because the attraction available to you now is better than what you had before. It's not based on performance or potential. It's based on who you actually are. And who you are right now is more than enough. If this resonated with you, if it helped you see yourself a little differently, I'd love for you to subscribe. I make these videos because I believe in the men watching them. I believe you have so much to offer, and I want to help you see that for yourself. So stick around. There's more we need to talk about. And I'm glad you're here.